All right, we are back in our routines, and I'm in another shirt. I'm gonna run out of pretty shirts.
I actually really panic about what I'm going to wear for these things, and I feel like I should have a uniform so I don't have to think about it at all, or I'm really committing to I'm always wearing something different, and I'm on a bad track.
Wasn't the point of a podcast to not be seen? I don't know who started
Why
this.
must we be perceived? But we're back to sort of our normal, no more glamorous photo shoots for me for at least a year, one would hope, but maybe you've got a couple coming up.
I'm still wearing the makeup from the.
Oh my
I
God. Yeah.
refuse to take
It
it
took
off.
several wipes to get it off my face. I will say that. I'm also in the vein of not glamorous. I'm sitting here with a heating pad because and we're going to
What?
leave this in because we're normalizing women's healthcare. I'm having some awful menstrual cramps. So I'm here under duress.
I feel like gay men actually have those also.
That's not true, Soman. Oh my God. Cancel. Cancel. You're canceled for saying that. You know nothing of our struggles.
And we begin.
I'm Victoria Aveyard, author of the Red Queen and Realm Breaker series.
And I'm Soman Chinani, author of the School for Good and Evil series, and welcome to Plot Twist, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the biggest swings in our career. Victoria's Tempest, her very first novel for adults, an epic pirate fantasy.
And Soman's Young World, a red-hot young adult political thriller. Each week, we go behind the curtain of our creative process and we give you our hot takes on thorny issues in publishing and entertainment. We answer your mailbag questions and we pitch plot twists that we want to see in real life.
And today's hot topic, are you a career author or a hobby author? Those are some fighting words. But first, we're going to get on to our usual first segment, where every week we just come up with a word or phrase that encapsulate the essence of our week on and off the page. So what is yours, Victoria?
Well, last week it was holding pattern, and this week it is still holding.
Oh, this is transportation in the year 2025.
We need Pete Buttigieg. I'm still waiting on my edit notes, and this is pretty normal. It is also an extremely long draft. Schedules flex, things change. The publishing industry moves very slowly. This is normal. But I am working on one sheets for my next book ideas. I remember last week I was talking about I'm going to start writing the proposal for one of them, but I know I have 3 ideas. I have 3 projects that I want to do. But I'm going to do one sheet overviews of each of them, which is basically just like a page long synopsis, kind of halfway between a synopsis and a query letter. And I'm going to give them to my agent and get her notes on how we should arrange them, because this is a business, this is an industry, and it's important to think strategically. We're going to talk about this in career versus hobby. It's important to think strategically as to what my next steps should be and what will make the most sense for me as an author. I obviously want to write all 3 of these things. I am someone who can't really work on projects, more than one project at a time. So even this is a little bit hard because I'm in Tempest at the same time. But I love getting my agent's feedback on the strategy and sort of where the wind should be blowing me next, because it's blowing you in so many different directions. You have so many ideas. I love all of these ideas. I want to do all of them. It's just I need to think strategically about where I should be going next. So I'm going to get those hopefully settled in the next week or so.
That's really interesting that there's sort of 3 projects, there's 3 planes on the runway, and that are they 3 very different ones without telling us what they are? Can you give us a sense of the target market of each one and how they differ?
Yeah, so one I imagine is a young adult duology. That said, I have had some friends who have pitched or sold YA books on proposal that in the proposal submission process have had editors come back and say, is there a way we can age this up? Because the adult, especially the adult fantasy space, is much hotter right now than YA. And so there's that thought process of, can we kind of move this into the place where the market currently is? So while I feel that it is YA because it's a very young adult sort of journey and character, we will see. I want to get the feedback on that. Obviously, if I will do what I feel is right.
Yeah.
But that's worth getting feedback on. And then the other 2 are definitely adult series or adult books. One is a series, a big series, a lot of heavy lifting, and a big undertaking. And then one is a spinoff of 2 characters from Realm Breaker that I will absolutely write. Will someone buy it? Will my publisher buy it?
Yeah.
Remains to be seen, but I will one day absolutely publish it in some form.
What's funny that I think we'll talk about this more when we get to
Hmm.
career and hobby authors in our industry nonsense segment. But this idea of, all of us have multiple ideas and how to choose what to write and what not to write. This is going to show up for the rest of the episode because it is a question that many, many people have, what to write
Hmm.
next. For my week, last week was Ready Set Launch, and this week is new book, new routine. Because when you start a new book, it's such inspiration. Like it's almost like you're possessed by an
Hmm.
idea, and it just launches. So in between, all of the young world stuff and everything that was happening, and all my travel, I was just sucked into the beginning of this new fantasy book, and was able to do those first 4 chapters in this kind of fugue state where everything was happening in this like absolute kind of sparkle burst of inspiration, and I was having the best time. And now that like sort of everything's being cleared away and this book is now my sole focus, it's almost like the rose has started to bloom and it's there, and now I have to create this routine where this is my new full-time job, this book, and I'm
I
just
love
in it,
getting back into the routine. I
but
love
it's
it.
different for every book, and it's
Is
something
it?
that we'll talk about. It's about creating the routine that works for it. So it's almost like you're going back to being a full-time writer. I was thinking about the difference between tour brain and writing brain. When
Mm.
you're on tour, it's almost like the organizational side of your brain, the admin brain is in control, and you're living on caffeine and no sleep, and everything's about how quick can you think, how quick can you manage problems, put out fires. It's like an organizational part. And then when you get into full-time drafting and everything is cleared away, even my assistant's going on vacation, for not vacation, but like sabbatical for 2 months, where I'm just going to be writing. And I feel like I stopped drinking any caffeine. I let my brain totally slow down. I spend a lot more time at the farm, and I just get into it's a different place. But I think it's authors really do have two different brains.
Yes.
The brain of the business brain, and the promotional brain, and then the writing brain, which is totally different. And to be able to slip back into that, especially when summer, when you have longer hours and you
Mm.
can work later, I love it. So I'm looking forward to new book, new routine for this week's theme. But why don't we look at how we did with we're going to set some goals for this week like we do every week. But we always start by looking at our goals from last week and seeing how we did. So let's start with, I think your first goal was that you were going to write the only chapter that you bullet pointed in Tempest, the big 10,000 word battle sequence you were planning.
Failed. Didn't even attempt.
I don't
No,
blame
it's.
you.
I know, and here's the thing, and I think it's coming back to you being like you're not ready to go back
Mm,
in,
mm,
and I think that's where I feel still like I'm sinking back into it. I know it's going to happen. It's just not happening yet. I'm focused on other things. And
mm.
I also think I feel like I have this mental block until the edit notes come back. I can't
Mm-hmm.
really let the horses run. I don't want to like let the creative energy and the enthusiasm and the motivation on this project go until it's like you really need to go. So you're almost you know how much gas you have in the tank and you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to start spending it where it's not going to be most
But
useful.
also the edit letter might change it, I think. So it's
Yeah,
almost
that's oh
like
fuck, I didn't even
like
think of
if
that.
you're gonna work so hard on this big battle sequence,
I got
you
to start
almost
cutting the corners. I don't know.
want to kind of see. So
Yeah, that's a
I
good
don't,
point.
yeah, I don't think it's a mental block. You
I
might just
know.
be waiting.
That's a good point. Maybe I'm subconsciously protecting myself from doing too much work
Mm,
in the wrong direction.
mm.
My other goal, I wanted to do 3 yoga classes. I did 2.
That's
So
good.
that's
That's
a
a D.
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 That's a 66%. D's pass. I don't know. I don't know what grades are now at school, but in my day, D's pass.
Oh man.
And then also doing my best to start scaling back on social media. Maybe.
You haven't called me with a complete panic over something that's happening on Thread, so I feel like you succeeded.
I don't know. There's a lot, and I feel like the thing with threads that I keep coming back to and have to continuously remind myself of is the algorithm feeds off of rage, and it
Mm,
benefits from you being there, holding you there, and so you're seeing like the worst parts of every conversation. You're seeing the things that are gonna try and make you engage, and I'm trying to tell myself like, don't fall into the trap.
Well, here's what's funny. I don't use Threads unless it's to go look at something you've told me about or to defend you against
That's
anyone who
self-care.
dares says anything. But what's funny is now if I open Threads, I only get posts about you because I literally am just there to engage with
I'm so
whatever's
sorry,
happening.
Soman. That sounds like a nightmare.
So I only get posts defending you and essentially calling you for to be burned at the stake, you know? So either you're Joan of Arc or you're like, the
Well, both
devil.
burned at the stake.
All ends in hellfire.
And a bad haircut.
Oh God.
So what about your goals from last week? How'd you do?
First one was to just
Yeah,
go.
how did the launch thingy go?
It went really well. I think there was something about in person to do a
Mm-hmm.
launch is much more variables. When you're doing it on Zoom, in this case, there's 250 faceless people around the country. There is a way to rehearse for it. And so it's almost like doing a TED talk
Mm-hmm.
where you just, I knew about this, that I had to do this last Thursday. So I had about 6 days to prepare. So I really did prepare every possible situation for like if the tech went wrong, if the slides didn't come up at the right time, if, everything. I just really did probably 12 or 13 run throughs with
Holy
different
shit.
kind of experimentation. Sometimes what I'll even do for a presentation like that, because you have one shot is sometimes I'll do it hyped up on caffeine because that mimics your heart rate when you're stressed.
Mm.
So I'll even do one run
Wow.
that way. So like
You really do the variables.
yeah,
You're
because
like Doctor Strange, like,
I just want
there's
to
one way to do this.
I want to feel totally in control of it because when it's happening, um I don't know, I just think it's too important to kind of mess up. So
Absolutely. But
it
I do
went.
want to say that is very unique of you, I think, to run it that many times in that many ways.
I think it's a control freak thing where I
Well,
feel
yeah.
like if I feel like I
Yeah.
can deliver through preparation, I will prepare. So I think it got it off to a good start, and I think everyone at Random House kind of like understood the book now from my perception versus everything else. And it sounds like the cover is going to be approved, so that's
So
the important thing.
just to refresh our memory, what
Mm.
is the launch that you just did?
So there's 4 seasons to a publishing schedule. And every publisher hosts a big launch where basically everyone in the country who works for the publisher gets on Zoom together and hears about all the different books in that season. And at Random House, they choose one or two books to kind of have a spotlight during launch where the author gets 15 to 20 minutes with their editor to really present the book. And in our case, Young World was selected partially because it's such a different kind of book with all the art and it's sort of immersive experience and it's a different kind of genre from anything else. And so this is your chance to talk to the sales rep, the marketing, the school and library people, everybody all at once and really sort of present and pitch the book because they might not have read it yet. Most of them, 98% of them haven't read it yet. So it's the advantage of getting to pitch a book to the people who are going to be selling it for you. And you can actually tell them how to sell it by using everything you know about the book. So that's why it takes so long to prepare and get it right, because this is your one chance to control the narrative, you know.
Hmm.
These things used to be in person, the launches, and then post COVID, everything's now done over Zoom. So that was the first big goal for the week. The second was to finish chapter 5, aka part 1 of the new book.
And
That went about as well as your bullet pointing of your you're writing your bullet pointed battle, meaning
people are going to listen
no.
to this podcast and think, what? They don't write. I promise you, we do.
It's gonna
We do a
happen
lot.
at some point. We're gonna be like, we wrote this week. And then the third goal was for the Young World basketball team in their brand new nuclear orange uniforms to win their first game, and they did indeed win by
Yes.
15 points. So they are 1-0,
15.
and so they've got 9 games in their season. They've got 2 games next week, so we'll see how it went. But
I
they
don't want
loved those uniforms, and like it was funny to see them do their little 1, 2, 3 Young World thing every time they went into a coaching thing.
I don't want you to put the pressure of your publishing journey on 10, 14-year-olds, but I feel like this team doing well.
I think
It's a good omen.
this is gonna make you laugh so hard. So the coach is this really awesome, fierce woman named Jennifer, and she got them all together for the huddle, and she's like, they're a feisty team. Like if they're gonna fight the officials, they're gonna yell at the officials if they want. And she goes, listen, The officiating at this tournament is going to be very bad. I'm telling you right now. I'm looking at the officials now. They're going to be bad. But you are representing him. And she points at me. It's his book. You are not to embarrass him or do anything that shows up on the local news.
Oh my God.
So
You're the
anyway.
one who says all press is good.
I know. I was
So-
secretly hoping for some kind of drama. Let's talk about our goals for this
Okay.
week.
Yeah, what goals do you have? Chapter 5?
Mine are super simple. Chapter 5, and find that new slow brain, what is it called? Slow eating, when you eat meals calmly and slowly, and like.
Hibernation?
And no, there was this movement where it was teaching people like to eat slowly, which is essentially.
I'm going to tell you one thing, Soman. I'm from an Italian American family. There is no slow eating. If you eat slow, you don't eat. Has it affected me mentally in the future? Maybe.
Probably. Okay, so finish chapter 5. It has to be done, and I'm gonna slow eat my way through it.
Okay.
Your turn.
I like that characterization, though, of your routine. It's about slowing down.
Mhm.
I feel like mine is just about stressing out and focusing so hard on the draft that everything else falls away in a unhealthy way.
Mm.
But so for me, my goal is obviously the Tempest battle scene and those finish one sheets to my agent. So that's where I'm hoping to be. I do also want to get those 3 yoga classes in a week. I think that's a good goal. Again, these are classes I take at home in the comfort of my own house where no one can see me and no one can touch me.
You'll get there.
Those are good goals. So now we're going to move on to the meat of the podcast, our industry nonsense, where we dive into thorny issues in art and publishing that other people might be afraid to touch or too informed to touch.
And this week's question is a good one, and it's one you've been engaging with a lot lately, which is, are you a hobby author or are you a career author? So to that question, are you a hobby author or are you a career author? Tell us everything you want us to know, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. And again, these are our personal opinions, sort of what we have formed from what we're seeing. And this sort of idea of career versus hobby author, to me, it didn't start that way. It started because I was trying to figure out, there's like this seemingly continuous friction on social media within the author community. There's a lot of like lost in translation moments. And at first I was very like, what's going on here? What's happening? And it took me a while to realize people are coming at the publishing conversation from different spheres of publishing. And people are talking about their own experiences in self-publishing, in indie publishing, in traditional publishing. And their experiences differ very, very vastly. And sometimes we're saying the same words, but we're not meaning the same things, but we're both correct. And so that's where a lot of misses I thought were coming from. So I thought the big distinction was between like self-pubbed authors and traditional authors. And then as the miscommunications continued, I realized it was more between career authors and hobby authors. So I was seeing, well, wait, I agree with an indie author on this. They agree with me on that. But then this person doesn't. This person is missing something. I really realized this after I saw there was some discourse about authors going to festivals. And someone was talking about an author who's hoping to make a profit or break even from a book festival was not in it for the right reasons. And I remember having this moment of, oh, this is the difference. It's career and hobby. It's not indie and trad or self-publishing and trad. It's career and hobby. You and I are both career authors. There are many trad authors who are career authors, many indie authors who are career authors, because while this is our art and our passion, we're thinking about this not just as a business, but as our long-term profession and livelihood and something that is like a key part of how we provide for ourselves and potentially our families. Like we're in this for the long haul. It doesn't mean we don't have day jobs. There are plenty of career authors who have day jobs, to my opinion. But it does mean we're thinking very strategically. Again, this goes back to me choosing, which story do I want to write first? Because it's not necessarily just my heart says this one. I gotta think strategically. And so conversations online from me can sometimes be very impulsive, and it's worth thinking, like, where is this person coming from? Are we speaking the same language? Are the goals the same? And that career versus hobby thing, I come back to and I'm always like, this is where the disconnect is. It's a career versus hobby situation. It does also go back into our conversations about the algorithm, and Threads is this new frontier, even for you and me who have been on social forever. because the algorithm brings different spheres of publishing together, and we've never really been in the same space before. So you do have all this friction, which benefits the algorithm because it gets you to stay longer and engage more, and it's all part of it. Like they're incentivizing our rage, and it's so frustrating.
Well,
And I get got quite a lot.
it's interesting because I was thinking about that too. The difference between like, okay, let's say you played professional tennis. It's not like Roger Federer has to engage with me. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, because his work, which is in a different arena and stage. So
Yeah.
you don't have that many industries where the professionals and the recreationals are sort of lumped all together, and it's hard to distinguish sometimes between them. And one of the things I was thinking about is when I had a day job, when I was tutoring and just aspiring to be an author, I knew nothing about the industry at all. And my first editor, Phoebe A, who was at Harper at the time, we'd have these like insane arguments because she'd be like, this is how it goes. And I'm like, why is it done this way? Why can't I still have access to the manuscript after it goes through copy editing? Why can't I, all these questions, which are
Mm-hmm.
much like the ones on threads, which are like, if you know nothing about the process or haven't been traditionally published, there's this feeling of this is how it should go. This is what makes sense. This is the like almost like a purity test. This
And I
is what
think
should be
there's vice
done.
versa too. There's plenty of things that in self-publishing where we're like, wait, that's not how it works. And they're like, no, it is how it works over here.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. And so it's two different things. And so the other thing to think about is the fact that, when you are a traditionally published author, you are part of an industry. You're working
Mm,
for a big publisher, and they are a machine in the way that they're putting up the money for your project to give it, national distribution. And I'm thinking about, what Miley Cyrus said in her interview with the New York Times this past week, where they said, the industry has chewed up a lot of people and spit them out. And she goes, I don't think of it that way because I am working in the industry. Of
mm-hmm.
course, I'm trying to make the record label money. This is not just about me. And if you go in there thinking this is about my artistic purity and them believing in me and giving me sole control, like you're setting yourself up for crazy failure. You're there to help the publisher make money because then that will give you an opportunity to get to do this again with the publisher's backing. You have to understand the symbiosis of working with a publisher, which is, I
Yeah.
think, the difference between a career author and you know, hobby author. The last thing I would say is, we both had the experience of a debut or someone trying to publish coming at an argument, with this sense of purity. But inevitably, they change their tune once they're in it. This is a terrible example, but I'm thinking of Dan Bongino, who was like appointed
Soman.
to whatever deputy FBI guy, and he went in there being like, "I'm gonna find out about the Jeffrey Epstein case files because it was a conspiracy and all this stuff." And then he gets into office, and he's like, it was a suicide. I looked at the files. It's exactly what they said and no one believes him, right? All his no,
Well,
but
I
he's
also
like,
think that might be because he only said that to gain traction. I don't think it
of
was a
course, it's
genuine thing.
it's things that are said to gain to get the
Yes,
algorithm on your side,
yes. And to be fair, that is not new.
Mm,
We have seen that happen. Like, we remember ye old days of Twitter. We remember a lot of people who would make noise and gain traction off of making noise, not necessarily their work.
yes,
But
yes,
that was
yes, yes.
only, and back in the Twitter days, at least what I was seeing was only in the trad pub space because, again, the algorithm was different back then. And you were seeing, the timeline of people you follow. You weren't seeing people outside that sphere. So that was same conversation, but in one silo.
But the
And
other thing I was going to say with the hobby authors is they have a much harder burden in the sense of breaking through, right? So like with
mm,
with a career author, you have the publisher behind you, and
well,
you
I
do
think
have.
it's clear to make the distinction that not all career authors are just trad authors. There are absolutely many career
Mm,
authors who are indie authors, and they have their own sort of infrastructure that they have created. They have their own pattern, and they are very much like strategizing and business headed in the same way.
that's such a important point. It's not just about being traditionally published in order to be a career author, even
Hmm.
though that's a mistake that I obviously just made, and it's easy to make. I think it's how would you make the threshold between the two? Like what do you think the
It
actual
literally
definition is?
just is, and it was again that keystone of you're not in it for the right reasons if you're looking to make a profit or you're looking to even break even traveling to a book festival.
Mm,
And that was a moment where I was like, oh, there are a lot of people in the same space with a lot of us who are approaching this from just the passion perspective, which is fantastic. We all have it, but there's not the business sense, the strategy behind it, the how do I maximize this thing for long-term
Mm.
success. And it's almost like um and we talk about this with our agents a lot too. In the trad publishing space, the publisher is focused on selling the book.
Mm.
The publisher is not focused on selling you long term.
Yep.
You have to be focused on selling you long term. Our agents are focused on investing in us long term and making sure we have a long career because that benefits us and that's what we want. But there are plenty of people who are like, I love this book. I'm going to publish it tomorrow. And if it finds readers, fantastic. Um, and I wonder, I think back on my like fan fiction days when I was posting fan fiction and like the biggest rush was just hitting post and getting a couple of
Mm.
reviews. And now in hindsight, there's, or at least the fan fiction space has changed a little bit where you're almost like advertising the chapters, you're maximizing readership, and
Mm.
there's thought and strategy behind it that I didn't have. That's my dog.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, this is interesting too, is this idea of, let's say you're a hobby author, right? And you write this book that you've been working on a long time just because it's in you and this is your first attempt. And then suddenly it's picked up, it's a hit. That's where you can get caught between the two because you
Mm-hmm.
just made this book out of a dream, not necessarily wanting to be an author. You just had an idea for this book, in which case the publisher can really, if you don't have, aren't career minded,
Oh,
you
yeah,
can get stuck doing exactly what
absolutely.
they want instead
And
of what
we
you
have
want.
seen this. We have seen authors who, and I've spoken to indie authors who are coming into the trad space and been like, do you have an agent? Do you have someone looking out for you? Do you have author friends who are you are able to weigh in with, to
Mm.
talk to make sure you're not getting fleeced? Because I know people who are getting fleeced and who are not in the community in the way they should be to protect themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the reasons, and you and I talk about this a lot, where I always encourage new authors, if you're going to a festival, if you're going to a book event, if you're doing an event with another author, try and maximize like the social element as well. Like go to the cocktail party, go to the mixer, go to the green room and chat with people beforehand, go to dinner with your
Mm.
conversation partner and talk to each other because that is the only way we learn. Like you were saying, when you were a debut, you knew nothing.
Nothing.
They're not giving us a pamphlet on how this works. The only way we learn is by talking to each other and talking to other authors. And so I'm super passionate about making sure newbie authors do that. And of course, it's even more difficult now post COVID. There's less events, there's less community
Mm-hmm.
spaces, or the community spaces we do have are very public. And the conversations can't be 100% honest because you have people chiming in who are like, don't say that. And you're like, this person needs to hear this. And now I can't talk to them or I don't feel safe talking to them in this space. We have to find another space.
Which is also why I think we wanted to do this podcast because often you're bringing up such important things, but you're limited
Hmm.
by the word count or the
Yes,
length
we
of a
are all
reel or
limited on
TikTok.
social media platforms as to how much nuance there can be in our conversations, how much context we can give. Because
Mm.
there's absolutely times where I'm like, someone says, well, what about this? I'm like, I've already talked about that, but it's not your fault. You didn't see that. It's,
Yeah, and
I
so
can't include everything.
but hopefully this and many other things will be a resource for them to tap into. Speaking of people having questions, let's go
Mm,
on to our next segment, which is the reader mailbag, where we answer two of our favorite questions from the week. And this one's such an elemental one that I think it's a good one to answer for this week. How do you decide what idea you want to write? What makes something a book you want to work on? And this is so relevant right now because you have
yeah.
your three one page, one pagers.
Yeah.
So what's going to ultimately, besides your agent's recommendation okay, this is the smart business thing to do, because I think that comes with the caveat of it might not be the smart business thing by the time it comes out, you
Yeah.
know? So what makes you decide to write something?
So, of the three ideas, one being a spinoff, one being a YA, and one being a very heavy lifting involved, like epic adult fantasy series, that adult fantasy series has been in my head, the idea, since I want to say like 2014.
Mm.
I've written the first 20,000 words of it a few times in that. So, it's been with me almost more than 10 years
Mm.
and it's always been on the runway and I've always pushed it back partially because, I've been on deadline for other things. I've been in the middle of another series and partially because I'm like I don't think I'm there yet in my skill to attempt this.
Mm.
And I didn't think, placement wise, my slate doesn't allow for this yet. And also the idea of jumping back into a big series was kind of intimidating to me
Mm,
after doing two. But one of the benefits of the idea coming 10 years ago, the concept coming 10 years ago, working on it a lot in the last 10 years means that I know it is something I really want to do because
mm,
it is continuously tapping
mhm,
on my shoulder. I've had ideas come and go that I've been very enamored of and think, oh my God, that's so good. And then it fades. And
mm.
it's the ones that stay where you're like, okay, you need to come out of me in some way.
I think that's right because also, you know, we're working often in fantasy spaces, and I think what I've always believed for myself is a book has to last at least one presidential administration in my head before I write it. Because
Interesting.
it cannot be motivated by the political environment. It can't be motivated by what's happening in the world at that particular time. Especially if there's an administration I don't engage want to resist or don't engage with, then I need it to sort of be timeless. And the only way to know if something is elemental to me is exactly that I just wait,
Yeah,
you
but
know?
inherently, it is always going to be a reflection of you at that time, and you at that time are always part of what's going on.
Agreed. But
Mm,
the time it takes to write a book can,
yes,
in the case of Young
yes,
World, took 3 years. So that idea had been with me 4 or 5 years.
yes. I actually felt some similar frustration to that with Tempest, not because I don't love Tempest and I'm really happy with the story and the character, but I remember, as soon as the new inauguration turned over,
Mm,
I was so angry and a little frustrated that I didn't have a work to channel that into
mm,
in the same way that I was able to channel with Red Queen, where that was already a dystopian, that was
mm,
already layered with political commentary. And then things started happening, and I was able to include a lot of my frustration and anger. Whereas this book, I was in the position where I was like, the book's kind of done, and I can't pour into anything yet. And it made me
interesting.
feel a little
Interesting.
like that's my only weapon, and I can't even do anything with it.
And put it in there, which is
Yeah.
so funny because Young World is such a political book and it's all about, young revolt and going against the system. And I wrote it in sort of the last few couple years of the fairly peaceful Biden administration and
You're still
finished
gonna get
it,
accusations of you made this too political, you
which
made
is
this
hilarious because
too.
I finished it on December 31st of 24. So it was done. And then it just happened that all of a sudden, once, Trump got into office, all these things that he was doing started to match up with
It's
the
almost
book,
like political tyrants follow the same pattern. So if
Oh,
you're modeling
possible.
off of historical tyrants and it's like, "Ooh, and you're seeing the same things in this guy?
And your
Hmm,
unconscious ends up, sometimes
let's connect the
you'd
dots."
be surprised at, and that's why the last things that I'd say about this particular question is what my agent always tells me is whatever I think is going to be next is never what's next.
Yes, that's true.
And so your unconscious, it's such a long marathon writing a book that ultimately your conscious mind isn't going to be the one that picks it.
Yeah, and that's just the way that trends work too, is something hits out of left field, and then
Mm,
everyone tries to copy that thing, and it reduces and reduces and reduces and reduces,
mm,
and then something hits over here and reduces and it's
mm.
over here. It's always how it's gonna be.
And that's on the micro and the macro level.
Mhm.
The second question is, will you ever write spin-offs of previous books? Oh my God, I did this for 10 years with School for Good and Evil. There were 6 books, 2 prequels, 1 graphic novel, 1 handbook. I mean, I think that series is so exhaustive. I don't think um, there'd be need to go back to it again.
Yeah, so it depends on the work. I always get that question about the Red Queen series, would you go
Mm,
back to it? And my answer has always been, well, I won't until I feel it tap on my shoulder,
mm,
or until I feel like there's more juice here. And I that series was such a big part of my life, and it was 4 books and then a fifth, short story collection. There was so much juice that I got out of it that I sort of felt like, okay, I'm very happy with where we landed, the characters and their arcs and the world of the story. That said, we're now in the place where I'm seeing a lot of books that like engage directly with Red Queen
mm,
and posit things about Red Queen, albeit in their own books. And I'm like, well, what if I just did that and started
y-
engaging with my own shit again? But again, it hasn't really tapped on my shoulder in that way. I will say for Realmbreaker, when I finished that, it was a totally different feeling
mm,
of I still want to be in this world. I still want to be with some of these characters. There's still juice here, And that's one of the 3 projects is a spinoff from Realmbreaker about 2 of the characters. And I can just go balls to the walls full tilt with them in a way that I'm really intrigued to do because they were 2 of the adult characters. It's more of an adult space. And I just feel like there's so much more story to tell there with those 2. And luckily, there are plenty of readers who are like, I want that. So I feel like, I don't know if my publisher will publish it. From what I understand in pre-talks, we'll see. But if it's just me publishing it like on Amazon, I'll
Yeah,
let
well,
you
that's the
know.
other thing is sometimes what makes us excited about doing something in our existing worlds as a spin-off is the chance to experiment with a
Mm.
new format. So I was thinking about like with, Red School, we crossed over Red Queen and School for Good and Evil just because neither of us had done a graphic novel before and
Yeah.
just had fun with this thing. I was thinking about I did fan fiction of the School for Good and Evil and secretly published it
Yeah.
until fans figured out that it was me. Like, there's something to be said for we did it. We did the series. We did
Oh,
it,
you
but
did you post actual fan
I
fiction?
posted. It's called
Soman.
Princess Club, and um, I was like, I finally just was like, I posted a fanfic, and everyone immediately found it.
That's crazy. I'd never heard of that, but I will say this because I get that question, like, would you ever write fan fiction of your own work? And I'm like, no, I want to get paid.
I,
Like, if I were to do that, I would just get paid for it.
I'm the dummy who did more words for free.
Your Indian father.
If you'd like to submit a question to our reader mailbag, you can email it to us at mail@plottwistpod.net, PLOTTWISTPOD.net. And for our last segment, plot twist we want to see in the real world. Mine is super simple. My new trainer in St. Louis told me he was very excited to train me because he'd never had an Indian before and he really liked South America. And I was like,
Soman.
India is not in South America. And he's like, yes, it is. It's like near Argentina. And I was like,
What?
India is in Asia. He's like, by China? I'm like,
Oh my God.
relatively, yes, somewhere near China and Asia. And he's like, but that doesn't make sense. Like China, Japan, like they all kind of like, and I was like, and so my plot twist in real life is that he comes to me. This is 2 weeks after he said this to me, and he's like, that whole bit that was a gag.
Open the schools.
Open
the schools.
schools.
No, that is a thing that I regularly think of when I encounter someone who does something like that. There's this saying, the intelligence that you think is average is actually much lower than it is. And then you have to realize that 50% of people are dumber than that average, and the average is much dumber than you think.
It's
and
rough.
I'm just like,
It's rough. He told me, he's like, I brought this up to him again yesterday. I was like, I don't understand how you got this far without ever seeing India on a map. And he's like, I got through on my body and my charm. And I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. I would happily take a new life where I get through entirely on body and charm.
I do think about that. You see some of these. That's the thing with social media these days when the algorithm is you see lives and thoughts from people who you would never see lives and thoughts from. And I use the word thought very loosely. Sometimes it looks like being dumb seems really nice.
That seems wonderful, actually.
But my plot twist, I want my editorial notes.
They are
really
coming.
Want them. I know they're coming. I'm waiting for them. I want them because I just want to get going. Also a plot twist that is happening, and then I want to see reverse all of the really good restaurants and cafes near me. Like Santa Monica is having a rat problem.
Oh my God.
And all of these places, their health scores just got downgraded. I'm still eating there, but I want the plot twist to be the rats were helping. It's a ratatouille situation. This is a big misunderstanding.
That is not only do you want that to be the plot twist, that is the plot twist. They are in there. They are in there making the meal.
My pizza was made by a rat. Of course it's good.
If you're looking for more rat meme content, we will make sure to produce it on our other social media. You can find me on Substack every Tuesday with Diary of a Novel, which is my overly confessional diary. And I'm on Instagram at SomanC. Also on TikTok, where my young intern is turning me into Gen Z memes.
They're very good memes, I will say. I appreciate your memes. Sometimes I copy them.
Oh, good.
And you can find me, Victoria Aveyard, on TikTok, Substack, Instagram, and Threads.
Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Plot Twist is hosted by Victoria Aveyard and Soman Chainani. It's produced and edited by Liam Billiam. Our logos, art, and graphics are by Michael Blank. The music is by Thieves and Louis Adrian. Production support from June Secchia.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to Plot Twist wherever you listen to podcasts and drop us a review to let us know how we're doing. See you next Thursday.